1 Corinthians chapter 8. 1 Corinthians 8. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 5 to 6. Put your finger there and then flip over a couple of books to Galatians. Galatians 4. 1 Corinthians 8 and Galatians 4. 1 Corinthians 8 and Galatians 4. 1 Corinthians 8. 1 Corinthians 8, verse 5 to 6. For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or in earth, as there be gods many, and lords many, but to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom all things were made. All things, and we by him. Okay, Galatians 4. Galatians 4, verse 8. Galatians 4, verse 8 to 9. Howbeit then, when you knew not God, ye did service unto them which by nature are no gods, little g. But now, after that ye have known God, or rather are known of God, how turn ye again to the weak and beggarly elements, whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? This is church age. This is Paul talking. And this subject runs the whole length of the Bible, and you'll find it, it is a hot topic with God. Don't serve other gods. It's important. Idolatry and serving false gods is a subject for every dispensation. And you wouldn't think that idolatry is something that nowadays we need to worry about. But Paul is saying right here it is. He's saying you did serve other gods. And we don't think of it that way, but you did. Before you were saved, you were serving another god, and it was a little g. This, if you want to put a title on it today, will be Pagan Principles Christianized. Pagan Principles Christianized. Now, this is a subject that will be sure to offend many people, and it may fortify a few and educate even fewer. But if you get offended, just get over it. I don't know.
Well, if it's the Word of God, you just got to do it.
Yeah, there must be something about these little g gods we need to know about in the church age, or it wouldn't be in here. Psalms chapter 113. Psalms 113. Psalms 113 and Amos 5. Psalms 113 and Amos 5. Psalms 113 and Amos 5. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah. And Psalms will be just to the left of center. Psalms 113, verse 5 and Amos 5. We'll start in Psalms. Psalms 113, 5 to 6. Who is like unto the Lord our God, who dwelleth on high? Look at this here. He who humbleth himself to behold things that are in heaven. In order for God to look at things in heaven, as in the galaxies, he has to humble himself. That's beneath him. It's below him. Our God is on high. He's higher than that. Who humbleth himself to behold the things that are in heaven and in the earth. Amos chapter 5. Amos chapter 5, verse 4. Amos 5, verse 4. For thus saith the Lord unto the house of Israel, seek ye me, and ye shall live. Okay, so the God who's above the heavens says you need to be seeking me. The heavens are beneath me. Seek me. Let's keep reading. But seek not Bethel, nor enter into Gilgal, and pass not to Beersheba. For Gilgal shall surely go into captivity, and Bethel shall come to naught. Seek the Lord, and ye shall live, lest he break out like fire, that's important, in the house of Joseph, and devour it, and there be none to quench it in Bethel. Ye who turn judgment to wormwood, and leave off righteousness in the earth. Verse 8 is important. Seek him that maketh the 7 stars. You know what those stars are? Well, it doesn't matter. It's 7 stars. And Orion. You know what Orion is? That's a galaxy. Or a constellation. And turneth the shadow of death into morning, and maketh the day dark with night. That calleth for the waters of the sea, and poureth them out upon the face of the earth. The Lord is his name. So he says, look, there's a lot of stuff you've been looking at, thinking it's God, little g. He names 2 things right off the bat. The 7 stars and Orion. So that's what the pagans worshipped. 7 stars. What they worshipped was this right here. The Big Dipper. If you look in the night sky, there's one thing that pops out. The Big Dipper. Now, there's other stuff up there that people imagine, but I can't see it. So, you can, I guess if you look long enough, you can go blind and imagine you see stuff. But the Big Dipper is very plain. You'll see that one. Just above the Big Dipper, you go straight, you'll see the brightest star, the North Star. Now, you can also tell many things from the Big Dipper, depending on the position of the Big Dipper. Tells you what season of the year you're in. What the pagans thought was that the Queen of Heaven spun the North Star to move the seasons. So they prayed to the Queen of Heaven in winter in order to get spring. And so forth and so on, all the way around. You'll find another thing that's interesting. The Big Dipper has 7 stars. 7 stars. In the Big Dipper, this is just a piece of Orion, sometimes called Thor's hammer. Okay, so now that we've gotten some pagan background, we'll see what the Bible background is. The Bible facts. Leviticus 18. Leviticus 18. This is a huge subject. I'm going to give you a lot of Bible today, and we may or may not be able to make it back to this garbage, but I'll just throw it out there quickly, and then you can research it on your own. Leviticus 18, verse 30. Leviticus 18:30. Therefore shall ye keep mine ordinances, that ye may commit not any one of those abominable customs. Okay, so what the heathen were doing, in God's opinion, were abominable customs, which were committed before you, and that ye defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. Okay, so they had another God of heaven. Now they go by different names, but it's the same system, just different names on it. So he says, look, I'm the Lord your God, so don't follow this system, these customs. Deuteronomy chapter 4. Deuteronomy 4, verse 2. He says, ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. He says, when I tell you to do something, and he gives them 7 feasts, he says, when I tell you to do something, you do it just the way I said. Don't add anything to it. Don't take anything away from it, because then you've polluted it. And one smidge of pollution ruins the whole thing, as far as God's concerned. Now, I'm going to show you quickly, and we'll come right back to this thought, but people try to say we can mix pagan systems with Christian and just use the Christian side of it. Well, you can't do that. How do you make Halloween good? You can't.
You don't participate.
There you go. That's about the best way.
But when they come to your door, give them some gospel.
Sure. Now there's many pagan systems out there. They go by different names. Namely, Christmas and Easter are the big hot buttons. Those are the ones. This is the time of year to do this message, so nobody thinks I'm picking on them. Christmas and Easter are not Christian holidays.
No.
They're pagan holidays that the Roman Catholic Church in 312, Constantine, brought in because they were pagan, and he thought if he could make it part of the church, he could combine the forces. Here's what happened. Constantine was in trouble. He had conquered all of the civilized nations. What was not conquered was the barbarians, the Huns, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Vandals. All of those were wild men. They would come in and destroy, and they didn't fight by rules. They had no allegiance to anything but themselves. So Constantine needed a way to unite them, so he found the way. The way is to use their pagan religious system and say it's Roman. Now we can all get along. So in 312, he put out what's called the Edict of Toleration. That was the precursor to the Nicene Creed, which became, or Council, which became the joining of all the paganisms with Roman Catholicism. And in that was what we call Christmas. It's not really Christmas, but we'll get into that later. Now, you can't go too far with this. And there are people who do that, who will take it to the so far to an extreme that I heard one man say, if somebody gives you a Christmas present, you need to tell them they can take it back, or you're going to take it out in the yard and burn it. You're not even going to open it. You know, that's a little out there. Okay. So just because something is pagan doesn't mean you can't use it. Everybody uses money. That money has got some of the most pagan symbols on it you've ever seen. But I don't see anybody threatening to get rid of money. Okay. Every day of the week is named after a false god. Every day.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Every day. We're still using the days of the week. That's why the Bible doesn't give you any days of the week. It says the first day, the second day. God has a numbering system. He came up with numbers, not names. The pagans name them after names. And this one took me a while to figure out. Friday is Freya, which is a fish god. And that's why the Catholics eat fish on Friday. Because they had to unite with the pagans.
Well, look at there.
Yeah, it's very clear. Now, here's the New Testament thing that people will use to combat. I don't associate with paganism. So if you say, okay, Easter is pagan and Christmas is pagan, I don't associate with that. Here's the verse they're going to give you to refute you. Colossians 2. Colossians 2, verse 14. So I'm going to preach a subject and preach against the subject and then re-preach the subject.
That's the way you do it, both sides.
Mm-hmm.
That's on both sides.
Colossians 2, 14 to 17. Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. And having spoiled principalities and powers, who made a show of them openly, triumphing in them in it. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Okay, so they'll say, look, the Bible says you can't judge me on holy days. This is a holiday. It's a holy day. You can't judge me on that. That's Colossians 2:14-17. Colossians, 1 Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. So they'll say, you can't judge me on this holiday thing. I can use it. God says everybody's open to their own conscience, and you can do whatever you want to or not to. Okay, let's examine it. Let's see if that theory holds true. When did God ever call a pagan celebration a holy day? Never. Okay, when did he ever call any pagan holiday a Sabbath? Never. When did he ever say any pagan celebration was a shadow of things to come? Never. A prophecy? Never. Okay, so what Paul's talking about is the Jewish system God put in place. So he said, if you're still going to go to Passover, you can do that. If you're doing that to God, that's fine. Go ahead and go to Passover. Do it the way God says to do it, though. If you're observing the Old Testament rules and regulations as a Jew, I'm not going to judge you on that. And if it's going to offend somebody, then do it or don't do it. That's fine. We understand that. However, it doesn't have anything to do with paganism. It has only to do with Christian things, what God has given. Otherwise, it's pagan. There's only two systems out there. There's a system that is God's, that he gave, or it's the devil's and is pagan. Paul here is referring to the Old Testament feast of the Lord, not the customs of the heathens. Deuteronomy 12. Deuteronomy 12, verse 29. Deuteronomy 12, verse 29. Deuteronomy 12, 29. Of course, this is God talking to Egypt, to Israel, and he's this is Deuteronomy. That's That's dual or second. This is the second law giving. When the Lord thy God shall cut off the nations from before thee, whether thou goest to possess them, and thou succeedest them, and dwellest in their land, take heed to thyself that thou be not snared by following them, after that they be destroyed from before thee, and that thou inquire not after their gods, saying, what are you going to say about these other gods? Here's what they'll say. Just curiosity. Human nature does this. How did these nations serve their gods? I'm just curious. How did they get to... What were they doing? Yeah. That's why when he told them to destroy something, he says, you go in, you destroy man, woman, child, animals, and pictures. Destroy it all. I don't want you learning what they did. Okay, how did these nations serve their God? Even so will I do likewise. Okay. Well, I doubt very seriously any Israelite who just defeated by God Jehovah another nation is going to walk in and say, my God just defeated yours, I want to serve yours. But he said it would be a snare. So let's watch what the snare is, verse 31. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God. Do what unto the Lord thy God? Serve him like the other nations did their gods. That's what the Israelites would do. They would walk in and say, how did this nation serve their God? Maybe that's an improvement I can make on my religious system. And that's exactly what they would do. God says here, don't do it. Thou shalt not do so unto the Lord thy God, for every abomination to the Lord which he hateth, have they done unto their gods. For even their sons and their daughters they have burnt in the fire to their gods. That's pretty bad. What thing I command you, observe to do it, and thou shalt not add thereto nor diminish from it. There it is. He's talking about customs and practices and religious worship. He's saying, I've commanded you how to do it. Don't add to it and don't take away from it and don't copy somebody else. He's made it very plain. It's something you can observe to do. It's observable. So it's an action. Look at Psalms 106.
Kind of blows Christian rock though. Rock songs don't have a lot.
Yes. There's no such thing as Christian rock.
Somewhat.
106. Psalms 106, verse 36. Psalms 106, 36 to 39. And they served their idols. Whose idols? Theirs, Israel's. So Israel had them some idols they had made, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto devils. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that Israel, who's been serving Jehovah God, now all of a sudden decides it's time to serve devils? No, they didn't know it was the devil they were serving. Just like us, if we start mixing pagan and heathen things into what we consider service for God, it's service to the devil. Keep reading. Verse 38. And shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto what? The idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went a whoring with their own inventions. Okay, verse 36, the word idol. You can draw you a circle around that and connect it to verse 37, unto devils. You can draw a circle around that and connect it to unto idols. So right in the middle of an idol is the devil. If you want to follow a pagan practice that is an idol, the devil's right smack dab in the middle of it. He says, verse 39, and went a whoring with their own inventions. Well, we found in verse 36, it was their idols. Israel had made them up some idols, patterned after something they learned from Canaan. So their idols, he says in verse 39, is their own inventions. You don't invent a way to worship God. They're trying to do something spiritual here. It's mysticism. That's what they're involved in. It's a religious custom. Religion. The world can't get by without religion. An atheist is probably the most religious person you know. They'll preach to you. And they are dogmatic about it. But it's religion.
I never understood why they fight so hard about something they think is not
Yeah,
real.
right, I know it.
It's not real.
Yep. He said in Amos, seek him that maketh the seven stars. In Job 38, verse 31, he talks some more about stars. Job 38, 31. Job 38, 31. Job 38, 31, right before Psalms. Job 38, 31. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Okay, so now he's talking about these celestial things up here, these stars and what they form, and this is what people have been looking at and worshiping. God says, I know I've humbled myself enough times to look down there and see what you're doing. I'm well aware of it. Verse 32. Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Now, verse 32. Mazzaroth in his season. Well, they thought they could. That's why they were doing these celebrations. They would have different pagan practices. Sometimes it's burning people. Sometimes it's throwing virgins into a volcano. They all have different practices that they think is going to appease their God of heaven, and she'll turn the dial and bring about another season. Verse 32. Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season? Is there anything you can do to change the season? Absolutely not, but they thought they could. And that's where all the pagan practices came from. He said in Amos chapter 5, seek him that maketh Orion. And he says in Job 9 verse 9, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. God's the one that made those. They didn't make themselves. They should have been smart enough to look up there and say, okay, I'm going to buy into your system. There's a queen of heaven up there. How'd she get up there? Who made her? Where'd she come from? God says, I'm the one that made all that stuff. And you're doing make-believe fairy tales. I'll tell you what's up there. I'll tell you how to serve me. Orion is called the hunter. God does not have hunters. You know what a hunter does? He goes out in the winter. The winter is the dark season of the year. Winter's when it's dark. This is when the Christmas festival happens. Why? Because they want the day to change. The days have been short, the nights have been long. They're basically in darkness. And it's cold, and the crops aren't growing. So they do these festivals, whatever it is that, whichever part of the country you're in, it becomes some different type of a custom. So they would do those in order to get somebody to change the season. Well, they're just idiots. Okay, so that's a winter sport. Hunting is a winter sport, and that's Orion. Right here, this is his hammer. Orion, that's a winter sport. God doesn't have hunters. He has fishermen. Fishing is a summer sport, as in mostly light. Just the opposite of the night. So the Big Dipper's got the 7 stars in it, and that's who he's referring to here. And these people were watching these stars, wanting them to rotate so they could get a new season. You can do it now. This is going to rotate within a 24-hour period. Just it's counterclockwise, not clockwise. It's going to rotate if you watch it all night. Well, you can't see it during the day because it's light, but it will rotate during the day. However, if you go out at the same time every night and measure it against the horizon, you'll find out what season you're in. And that's what they were doing, saying, hey, look, we noticed that at midnight every night, if the Big Dipper is right here, we've got this horrible winter weather. We need that Queen of Heaven to move the North Star so that we can get to summer or spring or fall, whatever it is. So that's what they were after. Amos 5 verse 8, he says, seek him that maketh the 7 stars. Now, wouldn't that be better? If you could have the one who actually made the stars, I think he'd be more powerful than somebody who's up there trying to move the stars. If you got enough power to make them, you got enough power to do anything.
You can play marbles with them if you want.
That's right. Look at Deuteronomy 28. Now there's 7 stars in the Big Dipper. There's a reason there's 7. We know 7 is completion or perfection. Deuteronomy 28 verse 7. Deuteronomy 28:7. Now Israel would look up into the heavens. He wants you to look up into the heavens and see him. Not yourself, not your future, not anything to do with you. That's what the modern people do, is they want to get their horoscope. What's this going to tell me about me? Zero.
Not a thing in the world.
That's right. It's about God, not about you. It'll tell you something about God. Okay, so here's what God says in Psalms 19. He said, the heavens declare the glory of God. Okay, let's look at some declarations. We found there's 7 stars here. Let's see what he says in Deuteronomy 28:7. The Lord shall cause thine enemies to rise up against thee, to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way, and flee before thee 7 ways. So if you'll follow the things I'm telling you, You can be one way. Jesus says, I'm the way, one way. If you'll get on my path, your enemies are going to be a picture of this. 7 ways they're going to move, and they move 4 seasons every year. However, if you decide you want to cook up your own plan and not follow the way, Deuteronomy 28:15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, and all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Verse 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7. 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed to all kingdoms of the earth. He said, look, this could be you just as well as it can be them. It all depends on if you're in the way, the truth, and the life. This comes back to its origin early on in the Bible. Nimrod is the founder of this system. Genesis chapter 10. The word Nimrod means rebel or panther, as in a black leper. And that's the name Hitler used for his fighting force, the Panther Division, Panzer.
Isn't he one of the relatives of Ham and Cush?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm looking at them.
Josephus says Nimrod hunted down wild beasts, which were killing the people, and taught them to build walls around cities for protection. And so we'll look at our passage here, Genesis 10, verse 8. Cush. Who's that? Grandson of Ham. Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. Okay, so he's powerful. Verse 9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Now, it doesn't mean for the Lord, it's before the Lord.
Is this Genesis 10, 8, 9?
8 to 10. Genesis 10, verse 8 to 10. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That means he was openly in defiance against the Lord in broad daylight. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. Verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Arioch, and Assyria, and Calneth in the land of Shinar. Earth's first kingdom is here. This is Babel. This is Babylon. He's the founder. This will also be the last kingdom destroyed in Revelation 17 and 18. God destroys it. But it's the same system. It lasts a lifetime. So he's here setting up an Antichrist system all the way back in Genesis chapter 10.
Wow.
Jeremiah 13. Jeremiah 13:23. Jeremiah 13:23. Can the Ethiopian, okay, that's the basic area that Nimrod's coming from, change his skin? Or the leper, okay, that's what we found out about Nimrod, his spots. Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil. Therefore will I scatter them as stubble that passeth away by the wind of the wilderness. This is thy lot, the portion of thy measures from me, saith the Lord, because thou hast forgotten me and trusted in falsehood. So if you're not trusting in God, you're not trusting in what he says, you are trusting in something. Man is born with a measure of faith. That's what the Bible says. Every man is given a measure of faith. And with that, you will use it. You'll trust something. God says here, either you're trusting me or you're trusting falsehood. That's what these pagans were doing, was trusting something false. Therefore will I discover thy skirts upon thy face, that thy shame may appear. Let's look at the end of the story, Revelation 13. We're going to travel back and forth all through the Bible. There might be a couple of books we don't hit, but
Revelation
13. We're talking about Nimrod, and he's a rebel, so we need to go to 13. And the beast which I saw, Revelation 13:2. Revelation 13:2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leper. Okay, that's Nimrod all the way. And his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Authority. That's what he's after, is authority. His own authority. Not God's authority. His authority. You can't get God's authority. You can be in submission to his authority, but you can't claim his authority, or it would no longer be his. Okay, so here, man wants authority, or the beast is taking authority. That's exactly what Nimrod was setting up. Look at Genesis chapter 11. Genesis 11. Genesis 11, verse 14. Genesis 11:14. This is the Tower of Babel, as in Babylon. It says, "Go to, let us build a city." Genesis 11, verse 4. What did I tell you?
14.
Oh, well, that's probably a good one too. We're going to look at 4.
Somebody was forgetting somebody.
Yeah, that does turn into a genealogy list. Genesis 11:4. This is how they're going to build them a city. And it's a religious system. Notice that they're wanting to get to heaven in that passage. Genesis 11:4, he says, "Go to, let us build us," so it's focused on man, "us a city." And then I'm going to skip through some of this. "And let us make us a name." The name they want is the authority. You used to hear somebody would be arrested and they would say, "In the name of the law, by the authority vested in me, by so-and-so." Okay, all of those things are calling on a name that has authority. So here they're saying, we want the name that is authority. We're going to make ourselves the authority. And that's the devil's system. He started it with Eve in the garden. You can be the authority. You can be God. That's not the way it happens. This man is trying to set up you are the authority, and you are not. I'm going to show you somebody who answers this whole system correctly. 2 Kings 5, verse 7. 2 Kings 5:7. He's wanting man to claim to be the I am. Man is not the I am. God has clearly said he is the I am.
Amen.
You am not. 2 Kings 5, verse 7. Here's what man is. I better look it up because I didn't write it out. Somebody read that to me.
And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes and said, Am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man does send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me.
Okay. He's not the I am. What is he in that passage?
A leper.
Am I? That's how you should title yourself. Am I? It's a question. You're a question before God, not an authority. And that's what he was trying to set up in Babylon. You can be the authority. you can be the I am. No, as a matter of fact, you can't. What you are is a am I? When Jesus at the Last Supper says one of you is going to betray me, what do they all do? Is it me? Is it me? Am I? Am I the betrayer? So that's the proper view of man, not the authority. Before God, you're a question always. Revelation 17:5 defines his origin. Either you serve God or the devil. And his religious system is revealed here in Genesis 10 and defined in Revelation 17. So let's look at it. Revelation 17:5. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abomination of the earth. Now he said a whole lot right there. Mystery. So it's a religious system that uses mysticism, something you've got to trust in that's not clear, that's shrouded in secrecy and has no plainly written final authority. Everybody's got a different opinion. Everybody gets a different revelation from some mystic form. That's mysticism. So he said it was mystery. He says it's Babylon. That's the place it comes from. So where did Babel start? Nimrod, Genesis chapter 10. He says it's mother of harlots. That's the root, the nature, the founding. It's going to act just like the daughter acts like the mother, like daughter, you know they say. So the mother of harlots. Okay, so Babylon was the founder of a religious system that God calls harlots. It's a female, it's a mother. As a religious system, it's a female god. Now you'll find in this whole pagan religious thing they've got going on, they always have a female and a male deity, because there's a night and there's a day. There's a summer and a winter. You know, opposites that become the whole. That's what they're trying to do. So with these deities, they create a plus and a minus equals yin and yang. So he's saying the female god is this mother. It's a religious system, and it's also a city because it's named Babylon. And the male deity that goes with that city is the devil. He's the male opposite of Babylon, which is the female mother of harlots. Look at Genesis 14. Genesis 14, verse 4. This will be a quick review. You already know this, but somebody might not. Genesis 14:4. The 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. So 13 is the number of rebellion. If you go through the genealogy list, I'll give it to you quickly. It's in Genesis chapter 5 and in Genesis 10. It starts Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, Ham, Cush, and 13, Nimrod. He's the 13th. So no wonder he's setting up a system in rebellion against God. He starts this mother-son worship. Male, female deities.
In Italy, 13 is considered to be a lucky number. And that's where Roman Catholicism, that's where Babylon is.
Yeah, that's in America. She's saying in Italy, they consider 13 a lucky number. Well, they would, because that's their system, Nimrod. That's where the Roman Catholic Church comes from. Jeremiah 44. Jeremiah 44:15 to 18. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt, in Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee. That's pretty stubborn right there.
Wow.
But we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we, our fathers, our kings, and our princes, in the cities of Judah. Okay, that's Israelites. They shouldn't be doing this. And in the streets of Jerusalem, for then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. Really? It just hasn't sprung up yet. You plant a seed, you got to wait for it to grow.
Yes.
But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, we tried it once, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. Well, how fast did you think it was your fruit was going to produce? Obviously, they tried it for a day or two and said, hey, this ain't working. You know, we haven't gotten some miraculous miracle. No 90-foot Jesus has come down here and passed out healing and wealth and happiness and long life. So they said, we'll go back to serving the Queen of Heaven. And that's what they're doing. It's a female deity. Here's the true system that all of this mimics. I'm going to give you what the facts are. And the devil is a great copycat. That's what he does. He's a mimicker. The true God is male for Israel. He's God the Father. You can just write this down. Matthew 23, verse 1 and verse 9. Matthew 23, verse 1 and 9. That's God of Israel as a father that's male. For the church age, Jesus Christ is the husband that's male. Ephesians 5:32. The true female counterpart for Israel is earthly Jerusalem. And that's the place he claims to have chosen to place his name. For the church age, it's New Jerusalem. The Bible says she's the mother of us all. That's a female. The devil is male. His counterpart is a female city as well. Mystery Babylon. The mother. Okay? So he tries to confuse it with different names and different customs. But that's the basic system. You just change the names and change the dressing, the costume that you go to the party in, and it's still the same system. Baal is a male sun god. Now, we saw earlier that God said, I made all these stars and I made all this system, and if you don't behave, I'll come down there and burn you up. Well, there's a reason for that, because the male in the pagan system is always represented with fire, as in daylight, as in the sun. So Baal is a male sun god, and you find him all throughout the Bible. Here's a very telling story on Baal. 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings 18.
We're saying God is the Father, he's not female, he's male, and for Jerusalem, and in the church age is Jesus, who is the male, the husband, and the female counterpart will be his bride, the church.
No, a city.
A city.
New Jerusalem.
New Jerusalem.
You find that in Galatians 4:26.
I wrote that down. I had to type
1 Kings 18:21. And Elijah came into all the people and said, How long wilt halt you betwixt two opinions? Okay, he says, you're wavering back and forth. I'm going to serve God, no, I'm going to serve Baal. Wishy-washy, whichever one's more convenient, that's the one I'm going to do. Humanity's always been the same. Whatever's the most convenient, that's what we're going to do. If it causes pain and struggle, then throw it out. What's convenient? Same thing here. Religiously, the same is true. Why halt you between two opinions? If the Lord be God, capital G, follow him. Okay, it's real simple. If Jehovah is really God, give up on everything else. Then serve him, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. See, it's male, him. And the people answered him not a word. Look at verse 23. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it into pieces, and lay it upon the wood, and put no fire under. Because we're dealing with male gods here. Put no fire under. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on the wood, and put no fire under. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord, and the God, capital G, this is how we'll know it's really God, the God that answereth by fire. That's a male God. That's what they thought of their male gods, was they were the sun, they were the fire God. The God that answereth by fire, let him be God. And all the people answered and said, it is well spoken. That's exactly what we believe too. And he proved to them who was God. You find it in relation to different names. Tammuz in Ezekiel. Tammuz is a male Syrian god. The Greeks call him Adonis, and his mother wife is Venus. The Egyptians call him Osiris, and his sister wife is Isis.
What?
Yes.
Don't you remember the Egyptians like to marry brothers and sisters?
Yeah, wicked. Incest. Ezekiel 8:14.
They were not going to keep through the bloodlines by doing that.
Yeah, they did just the opposite.
That's gross.
Ezekiel 8, verse 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north. Okay, this is the Lord's house, not some pagan temple. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Okay, this is this male Syrian god. They went to church to weep over, their soap opera star that, just got divorced for the 15th time, or, whatever. That's how much sense it makes. They're at the house of God weeping for a false god. That's just wicked. You find other gods here. Revelation chapter 9, verse 11. Here's 2 other gods that you'll hear about quite often. Hercules and Apollo. Those are male gods. Revelation 9, verse 11. This was 9:11. And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit. Well, his fire is coming from his home, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, and he's Abaddon. But in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon, as in Apollo. Ashtaroth is a female counterpart to a male god. You find this in the Bible as well, Acts chapter 19. I'm not going to give you all of them. There's probably about 30 of them the Bible lists. And in your notes, I'll give them to you. But Acts 19:27. Here's another female god. Don't ever name your child this name. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but don't name your child this name. Acts 19:27. Acts 19:27. So that not only is this our craft is witchcraft, is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess, that's female, Diana, should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. Okay, so there's a female counterpart. So there's a male and there's a female. There's a yin and there's a yang. One's fire and one's, we'll see wood in a minute. Because fire burns wood. There's a whole list of names that I'll give you in the notes. I list about 22 names of false gods that the Bible gives you. And I'll put the scripture references on it. We don't have time to go through them all. The custom of worshiping the god of the grove unites the male and the female. Because the grove is trees, as in wood, as in what fire needs to fuel. Jeremiah 10, verse 2. Well, yeah, it does, but it needs, just oxygen on itself doesn't do enough, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they actually worshiped the high place, not just in the high place. They were worshiping the high place. It was a grove. They worshipped the grove. The grove was the female counterpart, was the female god.
Oh, wow.
Jeremiah 10, verse 2 to 5. Jeremiah 10, 2 to 5. Thus saith the Lord. Okay, we know who's talking. This is authoritative. Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven. That is, if the Big Dipper is saying it's winter, don't be upset about that. Don't be dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. Just because the heathen are telling you the Big Dipper is predicting cold weather coming, don't get the almanac and get scared. Let God tell you what's going to go on. Verse 3. For the customs of the people are vain. Okay, let me explain to you what I mean. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with an axe. Okay, just so you know, it's a real tree. He says you need an axe to get it. Okay, we got it. Verse 4. They deck it with silver and with gold. Okay, they put some tinsel on it. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. That way you can put it in the house. They are upright as the palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. Now this is the pagan practice of Christmas, but it's not Christmas. This is, they would bring this tree in to worship the tree. Not to put presents under it, although that was a different system. Presents is a different system. But the tree itself was an idol they worshipped. That was a god they served. The grove, they served the grove. The wood is the female goddess. The fire or the sun is the male god. The wood is the fuel that fuel for burning, so the fire could have life. In these pagan practices, you'll find I don't know all the pagan, what do you call those things? The stories that go behind the male and the female gods. What is it called? No, it's called, anyway, I'll think of it when it's too late.
Say that again. What are you looking for?
Okay, let's take time out and figure this out. What do you call the pagan stories of mythology? There we go. I don't know all the mythologies, so I don't know all this, but I'll tell you, yeah, I have no desire to learn them. I just, it's like trying to read the Apocrypha. I tried to read it just so I could know what was in it, and I got about a chapter into it, forcing myself, and I just gave up. It's just boring. There's no life in it. I can't bring myself to get involved in it. Same with this mythology garbage. But you'll find one of the parties ends up dying. It's always some tragic love story. Well, that's because it's a picture of the seasons changing. God says, look, you're getting worked up over nothing. I'm in control of all this. 2 Kings 17. what's tempting to do is to hedge your bets. That is what got America in trouble, that made the big bubble pop, was that people were betting on bad debt. Derivatives. They would bet, they would place, just like the stock market for good things, there's a stock market for bad things. I'm going to bet that 25 people are going to default on their credit cards.
They actually do that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Make more money.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what caused us to go into this bubble that burst. Okay, well, people do the same with religion. Only it's not religion, it's mysticism. They say, okay, I'm going to take some Buddhism, some Mohammedanism, some of this and some of that, and after I've served all of them, surely that'll get me in. They did the same thing in Judges 17. The guy says, hey, look, you're a priest of Israel. That's great. Why don't you come serve with my other gods? That way I know I'll be safe. God will have to do me good because you'll be there with my other gods. Okay, so that's what they're doing. 2 Kings 17:33. They feared the Lord and served their own gods, after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. Okay, so they would go in and do just what God said don't do. They would learn the pagan customs. They would find out what idols they'd been serving. They would maybe tweak it a little bit so it wasn't so offensive and it kind of matched more of what they were already doing. But that way they could cover their bases. They could serve the gods of the area and the God Jehovah. This is nothing new for pagans. They did that all the time. You'll find where is it, in Nehemiah? Where I'm not sure where it is. Where the king comes in and the men are saying, hey, look, lions are eating us out here. It's because we don't understand the custom of the gods. And he said, okay, get you a bunch of Israelites to go over there and teach you the way of the gods. So they do this. They serve just enough of God so they think they're safe and hold on to the gods of the paganism. Psalms 95. Psalms 95 verse 10. Psalms 95:10. It says, 40 years long, that's a long time, I was grieved with this generation and said, it is a people that do err in heart, and they have not known my ways. This is God talking. He's talking about Israel that came through out of Egypt through the wilderness. If they don't know his ways, nobody's going to. I mean, they got all of the miracles. They got everything that people think they would love to have. A display of God. They got it. But he says they don't know my ways. Their heart is far from me. Here's some cross references if you want to write them down. Hebrews 3:17, 1 Corinthians 10:10, and Jude 1:5. That'll give you more of the story.
What was the last one?
Jude 1:5. Jeremiah 44. Jeremiah 44 verse 3. Because of their wickedness which they have committed to provoke me to anger, in that they went to burn incense and to serve other gods whom they knew not, neither they, ye, nor your fathers. He says, look, don't look for some new system of service to God. Don't look for a new modern worship. It's not of God. This new modern mega church movement is wicked. It's not of God. It's copying, it's mimicking the practices of the heathen. We don't need their customs. We don't need a rock band on stage. I don't need a smoke machine blowing smoke, because that's what's going to come up from the pulpit anyway. But I don't need a smoke. I don't need a smoke machine making it obvious. That's what they're doing right here. They have committed something that provokes God to anger. That's what he says. Look at verse 8. He says, "In that you provoke me unto wrath with the works of your hands, burning incense unto other gods in the land of Egypt, whether you be gone to dwell, that ye might cut yourselves off." Who did the cutting off? They did it. God's not going to stick around for that. "And that ye might be a curse and a reproach among all nations of the earth." You want to come up with a new system that God didn't invent? He says, I'll leave. I'm not hanging around with that.
Isn't that what happened to him?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jeremiah 46:25. 46:25. Jeremiah 46:25. "The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saith, Behold, I will punish the multitude of No, and Pharaoh, and Egypt, with their gods, and their kings, even Pharaoh and all them that trust in him. I will deliver them into the hand of those that seek their lives, and into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon." Guess who gets to use this system against itself? The God who's above it. He says, you think you come up with a system? You think that you can create Babylon, this mystery system? Watch this. I'll use it to destroy you. That's what he does. Heathens are getting destroyed by other heathens at God's bidding. "And into the hand of his servants, and after it shall be inhabited as in the days of old, saith the Lord." Zephaniah 1. Zephaniah 1, verse 4-5. Zephaniah 1, 4-5. Zephaniah 1, 4-5. We're almost done. They say when you say that, you get 15 more minutes of attention, so I just thought I'd say it. I'll say it another couple of times. Zephaniah 1, verse 4-5. Zephaniah 1, 4-5. "I will also stretch out mine hand upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from his place, and the name of the Chimram, what's that? Chimerims. That's something that predecessor to a chipmunk, I guess, with the priest. Verse 5, "And them that worship the host of heaven." Okay, the host. That's these stars. A host in the Bible actually refers to an army. So they thought that heaven was full of armies. And the gods up here would do battle in order to change something on earth. Now, they're almost right, because there has to be a little bit of truth in falsehood in order for you to believe it. You'll find in Judges, I think it's 5, where the stars fought in their courses against Sisera that day. Okay, well, there's something that goes on in the heavenly celestials. You'll find that there was a battle in Daniel between Michael the archangel and the devil. You find it again in Jude. So there is warfare that goes, but it ain't in the stars. It's a spiritual realm that you don't see. That's what they were after. They were going to worship these gods. It's the ancient TV sports program. That's exactly what it is. Which team are you supporting? Oh, I'm going after Thor. Oh, no, I'm rooting for Okay, and then they're going to do whatever practice they think will cheer on their God to get whatever result they want. It's just the old ESPN of, 300 BC. Look at Revelation 3. Revelation 3, verse 15. God says, here's what I think about this trying to serve me and every other god. I'm not too happy with it. Revelation 3:15. I know thy works. I know what you've been doing. That thou art neither cold nor hot. You won't decide, is it the Lord or is it Baal? You won't make that decision. You want to have them both. I would thou wert cold or hot. He said, I would like you to make a choice. If Baal is God, serve him. If the Lord is God, serve him. Verse 16. So then, because thou art lukewarm, and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Now, that's the serving of an idol and a false god. God said the result of that makes me sick. I'm going to throw up. That's what he's saying. I'm going to spew you out. Now, God's no different. He's still the same. He doesn't want you mixing pagan practice and claiming it's spiritual. You can use anything the world will allow you to preach. But you don't have to practice anything the world practices in order to get a right to preach. That statement is very important. It's similar, but it's nowhere near the same. For instance, I don't have to follow a pagan system of hiding Easter eggs and dressing up like an Easter bunny to go get them. I understand the pagan system of it. But if somebody wants to say Happy Easter, I can say, yes, Happy Resurrection. Do you know the story? Okay, I can use their system. That's okay. I don't have to be such an idiot that I have to say, that's a pagan, that's an idiot, y'all shouldn't even be doing that, or you're Roman, or you a Syrian. Yeah, okay. I can use it against them.
Right. Just like he
Sure.
used the system
For their
Sure.
own good.
Sure. Teach them something. In America, you could not, when America first was founded, for 100 years, you could not practice Christmas or Easter. It was outlawed because it was direct from Rome. It was Catholic. America was very anti-Catholic. You remember when John F. Kennedy got elected president? All the Christians were in horror because a Catholic is in office. This country has gone down the tubes.
He's the only Catholic president ever.
Yeah, he's probably as big and nothing as all the rest of them are. So, yeah, and actually he may have been better than some of them are. But yeah, that's the system there. Now, here's this yin and yang business. I'll show this to you quickly and then we'll be done. The Big Dipper, these 7 stars, is in their courses in the whole year long, makes out this thing we know as a swastika. But all it is the other name for it is the wheel of the year. It continues to turn. Okay, that's a swastika, that's where it comes from, and it doesn't mean Hitler. Hitler used it, but it predates Hitler. Okay, it's very heavily used in India. The Hindus and the Buddhists use it. They usually put dots right here when they use it. This yin and yang is from this because they're direct opposite. Spring, fall, summer, winter. See the yin and the yang? One hot, one cold. This is the yin and the yang that we know. But let me show you where it began. It began with the Big Dipper in the middle of a circle. One side of it is summer, so it's light. One side of it is winter, so it's dark. And the whole, when you make the complete circle, is a year. So we've got to modernize it because that's too obvious. So let's make it a swirly. That's what it is now. So it makes no sense really if they wanted to make a true circle that's saying half of it is dark and half of it is white or is light. Why didn't they just split it right down the middle? Make one half white, one half dark? Why didn't they do that? Because it stands for something. The 7 stars. It stands for the pagan system. You'll find, we don't have time to go through it all, and you can study this on your own. God's festivals that he gives the nation of Israel are in the light. The devils that the heathens served were in the darkness, asking for light. It's the whole system. They have 4 basic and 8 total systems. And that's all the pagan practices. Now, we don't have to worry about that because you are not going to go out and look for a star to worship, are you? But guess what? You are going to fall into the trap that the devil will be sure to set of pagan practice. So he's going to cook up some ritual that looks good to you. Israel thought their things were good too. They thought they were serving some religious system that would help them, not hurt them. They didn't on purpose fall into something that would hurt them. The question becomes, where is that in the Bible? How does God say to handle it? So we're not interested in what the world says is effective. And that's where it starts. The devil will come in and say, hey, look, the way you can be effective is don't tell people they're sinners, because that turns them off. Let me give you another system. Let's just love them. Just love them to death. Well, that's exactly what you're doing. You're loving them right to hell. You've got to follow what God has to say, or you've become a pagan. And modern Christianity is doing nothing more than Christianizing pagan practices. All right, that's all we've got time for today, so we'll cut it off there. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We pray that we would take these principles and that we would practice them the way you intend, and that we would weigh everything against what you have to say about it, and that we would not try to please the world and its system, but you, and find out how you said we can do that. In your name we pray, amen.